right, we got more time for comments, so let's jump into the next one. Audiolab1 says, it's funny because Final Fantasy XIV on PC is ran on Windows, which is basically Microsoft. So I don't see the Xbox regulations. These games and these game developers are so greedy that they don't respect player base. They just care about their money and being a monopoly on the business. And this is obviously in relation to Final Fantasy XIV not on Xbox being one of the few games that is excluded from that platform. What are your thoughts?
I think Sony is cutting them a check to be exclusive, and I think that Square Enix sees the growth in going to multiple platforms and has probably asked Microsoft to at least make up for part of, if not all of that check. And Xbox is like, no, like that's the only logical way that it plays out in my mind. Like that's what it feels like has to be happening. Otherwise, I don't see why it's not. It doesn't make any sense to me that it's not. It doesn't make any sense to me that it's not on Xbox. Like, I get why when they were busy trying to update for the PS5, that they're like, hey, right now is not the right time. But like, I would hope that during this next FanFest series, we would see something about them coming to Xbox for the post-Endwalker generation.
Mm-hmm. Now, while Windows and is what is run on Xbox, it's, you know, like it isn't a big stretch. It isn't essentially a massive leap. That's why we saw Final Fantasy XI easily ported to the Xbox 360 because of the kind of the core shared base. It isn't a right click and publish to Xbox. It's not like that aspect. And when I'm going to push back on Audiolab's comment about greedy devs, I think it's perfectly fine to have a value proposition. I think it's perfectly fine to say, this is what it costs. We know that, Square Enix games don't sell as well on your platform. Make it up to us. Make it worth our time because we bring that level of value. But when you constantly don't incentivize that relationship, I think you're only kind of dooming yourself down the line. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing here and now. A lot of people push back on, because like, yes, Final Fantasy 16 is on PS5 and Sony ponied up devs to help with that. You're telling me Microsoft couldn't do the same? You're telling me that couldn't be in the service that they offer? Well, no, that could have easily been a service they offer. Why aren't they offering that? Why aren't they willing to go that extra mile? The good news about 16 is we know it's going to come to PC. My concern has always been for players who don't have a PS5, can't afford, like it is a tax, right? Like it's called a hype tax. If you don't have a PS5, you're getting one. You guys provided one for me, but I was more than saving up the money for it. So I was more than willing to invest the $900 in Final Fantasy 16 because I was going to splurge a little bit and because my daughter didn't need to end up in the ICU. If she ended up in the ICU, completely different story. I've had those ICU bills before and that's just the way of life. So everything was great with the pregnancy. Everything was great with the delivery. Everything was great, had a little extra cash. And then you guys made it even easier by giving me a PS5. So not everybody is me. And I want to acknowledge that like blessing that you guys have been on my life for this. But I don't view Square Enix as greedy. I think that they are smart and they have a value product. And when it comes to market, I just wonder why aren't people more or less willing to write that check? Unless that check from Sony is so effing huge that it's a part of that huge check is you have to sit here and say no to other platforms, of which then I get frustrated. And I think it's okay to be frustrated. I get to experience 16. I'm excited about that. Both things can be true at the same time.
I don't know if either side's being greedy, right? Like they could both be asking for reasonable numbers. It could be that one side offered a reasonable number and the other side came back with something ridiculous, but we don't know which way that came. Square Enix could say, hey, I think Final Fantasy XIV is going to cost us X $100,000 in the first year of operation. So we either need some dev resources or a check so that we can bring on our own dev resources or something from you to help us onboard this. And Microsoft could have said, no, you should be paying us. In which case, like Microsoft is the jerk. The other side of it is Microsoft could have come in and said like, hey, we're willing to help onboard you. And they could be like, well, Sony's offering us $9 bajillion to not be on your platform. In which case, Sony's just stopping it, just to stop it. Like they're just stopping it to stop it.
Yeah.
In which case, Sony's the jerk. Or it could be that Sony says, hey, we're willing to help you with dev resources. And Microsoft's like, we're willing to help you with dev resources. And Square Enix like, yeah, but you should probably pay for all of it. In which case, Square Enix is a jerk. So like, we don't have that information. That's not done publicly. Publicly, Sony says, we just want game developers to be happy and gamers to be happy. And of course, we treat our first parties a little bit differently, but we have nothing to do with third parties. And Square Enix comes out and Yoshi P says, there's nothing stopping us from being on Xbox, and we want to be as many places as possible.
Right.
And Xbox comes out and says, we want to be the place for as many gamers as possible, and we'd love to have Final Fantasy 14. It's like, okay, but based on everything that's been said, then Sony's okay with it, Xbox okay with it, Square Enix okay with it. Why haven't we moved forward? So clearly somebody in the room is exaggerating their point, because somebody has driven friction. We just don't know, is that like extreme friction, or is that a little bit of friction on behalf of everybody? Like, is everybody just a little bit of friction, in which case nobody's really the jerk. It just isn't going to work out.
Right. And we know there's no requirements of Xbox Live. Like all of the barriers to put 14 on Xbox have been removed by Yoshi P's own words, by Phil's own words. And when it comes down to it, then like the one thing that I would say is on Xbox though, is that Yoshi P has talked about the release versions for the platforms, and everything it requires more testing. And I can attribute to that from a development perspective. Releasing on more platforms requires more resources, more testing. And I've always advocated that if that's the problem, that is a problem that is fixed with the check. And I think that's a problem that with the fact that it was Microsoft, and Microsoft was to blame for the reason Xbox did not have 14 at first, due to their wild strategies and requirements. And this was before Phil took over, and Phil has since broken down those barriers. I think that should be a check, that kind of like a real true apology check in this regards. If that was the last barrier, if it's just taking money to making sure that they have the resources they need so that they can release on time. Because if they were to put it on Xbox, then all of a sudden now they're talking about a 5-month patch schedule or whatnot, then I don't think 14 benefits from that at all. That would be a net loss, and I would absolutely support Yoshi P's decision because of that aspect. But I still think that's a problem solved with money, and the question ends up being, is it a problem that's being created? Is that delay created with money as well? One of the things that we will truly never know. All right, that brings us to the end of today's show. Now, I think due to your week and due to the raids and what you got coming up, we're going to shoot for Friday. I do need to confirm with Jules if that is something that works, because we have been doing the Monday, Tuesday thing, but tomorrow is patch day. I will be covering the Blue Protocol news over on Blue Protocol Central for the y'all who are interested in following that game. So if you're part of the Discord, you'll get the ping. If you're not, consider joining in. But that's kind of what our tentative schedule is for this week. Chris, you got any other thoughts you want to share before we wrap up today's show?
No, feel free to hang out all week. We're going to be clearing all the normal stuff this week, focusing a lot on getting to know those normal raids as best as possible, so that when Savage drops next Tuesday, I can get a clear week 1. So it's kind of the beginning of a 2-week sprint there. Don't think servers are offline today. I think it was just like a 3 or 4 hour maintenance, so pretty light maintenance on the patch. So hopefully those of you that are enjoying the last of the Moogle Tombstone event remember that with the next Moogle Tombstone event, with the hunt for Genesis, I believe, is next. That'll be 29 days out from patch 6.5. So 6.5, we start the countdown for. You can basically say it's right at 4 months from 6.4. And in between, we will have 2 live letters at least, because we could end up with a third, depending on what they end up deciding to call things coming out of FanFest. Yeah, exciting. It's going to be big. Should be a great week.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap us up for today. Chris will be live tomorrow morning, bright and early. So hope you guys all enjoy the rest of your Monday. Thanks so much for joining us. If you like this show, be sure to like it over on YouTube. If you like the highlights, be sure to do that too. And we'll have those being rolling out for you guys this week as well. So that's going to be it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'm going to go ahead and end broadcast, and it's actually going to end us on both.